This is the Penstar eNote, a large format e-ink notepad that really feels like writing on paper. It's bright, it's easy on the eyes, has excellent palm rejection, and a fantastic pen. And you can install Android apps on it, so it's flexible and adaptable. But it's definitely not perfect. It is, after all, less expensive than its competitors like the Remarkable 2. And that price difference definitely comes with some trade-offs. This is my review. Hey everyone, I'm Jason Howell, and before I get started, the folks at Penstar did reach out to me and sent me this device for review. Rest assured, all editorial opinions are my own, no editorial sign-off whatsoever. With all that out of the way, let's dive into the design of the Penstar eNote. So design-wise, I'll go ahead and take off the Folio case to get started here. On the back, you've got this aluminum plate. And it can be a little bit fingerprinty, as you can kind of see some of those poking through, but overall it feels pretty nice. It has this nice transition into what is actually a plastic framing. It does a pretty good job of blending them together, but they do kind of feel a little different between them. The front is mostly an ePaper display, as you can see, with some controls on the side. This narrow plastic control band actually gives you extra functionality and ties into the software, which I'll show off in a bit. On the bottom corner of the device is a USB-C port for charging, and then at the top corner of the device is a little power button. That's what you flick to turn on the display. Overall, it's very thin at 5.5 millimeters thick and pretty light at 390 grams. It really feels nice in the hand. Overall, it's just a pleasure to hold. Now, I had removed the Folio case. This ships with the device and fits in with the little magnetic snap into the two holes on the side, just snaps right into place. And it's kind of a nice inclusion. It's got a vegan leather to it and feels pretty smooth, you know, a little bit of fabric on the side here. Definitely stays held into the device pretty sturdily. If I pull a little bit tighter, I can get it to snap right out. And of course, this Folio case is important because it is how you stash away the included pen that comes with the device. It just slides in right there. What can you say? It looks nice, it protects the display, it does the trick. Now, opening it back up here, what you get on the inside is a pretty standard 10.3 inch e-ink Carta display, 227 pixels per inch, 1872 by 1404 resolution, if you care about that sort of thing. Clarity is excellent to my eyes, just kind of scanning over it, though competitors definitely have a higher pixel per inch count at 300 pixels per inch. That's what you get on the Kindle Scribe. That's what you get on the Books Tab Ultra C. Here it's a little bit lower, but overall, I mean, to my eyes, things look pretty darn sharp. Now, what's really special here, what sets this display apart from some of the others, is what they call PureView technology. This is Penstar's unique ePaper technology approach. And by implementing this, they essentially reduce screen thickness by 31%. But they're getting rid of a few things that you might miss in order to do that. They're getting rid of a capacitive touch layer. So I can, touch anything on the screen and it's not going to register anything. There is no multi-touch. As a result, you also get excellent palm rejection. Anytime you're using the pen and your palm rests on the display, you don't have to worry about that throwing anything off. That layer is gone. You also don't get a light guide layer, so no front light, no backlight on this. Essentially, think of it as if it is like just a piece of paper, right? You need ambient lighting in order to see it. It's the same here. It relies on the lighting that you have in the room. But really, the overall intention here is to get an experience that resembles, more so than the competitors, a paper experience. And, go ahead and pull the pen out. I mean, going into my Notes app and just firing something off just to demonstrate, I mean, there's a nice resistance to the screen, which kind of feels, actually to my hands, it kind of feels a little bit like a paper texture. Also the felt tip on the pen, which I'll talk about, drags along in a nice, comfortable way. It really goes a long way in resembling what it feels like to write on actual paper. It adds a nice resistance. It isn't slippery like glass in some of the other devices that we've seen. But again, you do have those trade-offs. You don't have that lighting. You don't have that multi-touch. Also, getting rid of those layers essentially means that it brings the pen closer to the layer that registers the actual writing that you see. So you don't have 2 extra layers stacking on top of that. And so everything is more compressed down. That actually ends up being going a long ways in kind of the illusion of writing pen to paper. So I think it's a pretty solid trade-off here. Going into this note, I should just mention that there is a little bit of latency as you skip through the interface, even when you draw like hello. I mean, it's reasonably quick. I didn't find that it really got in the way much at all, which is nice that that latency there didn't throw me off. Testing. It seems to keep up with my handwriting and not be super draggy, anything like that. Now under the hood, you have a 1.8 gigahertz quad core CPU. There's 2 gigs of RAM inside of this device, 32 gigs of storage. Also a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. There's a single speaker. You can kind of barely see it down in the corner there. That little texturized place down there is a speaker. And then there's up to 4 microphones scattered throughout the device. It's a quad array mic setup with noise reduction technology. This is useful because the device can actually audio record while you're taking notes. If I jump into a new note, and I'll show you up here, there's a little record function, so I can tap that, and then while I'm writing all of my notes, oops, I hit the eraser button. While I'm writing all my notes, it's also recording the audio that's kind of synced up to it. And that's a nice little bonus inclusion. Those microphones make sure that the sound is solid. And then while I'm writing all of my notes. Now we got to talk a little bit about the pen, right? Pen's pretty important in a device like this, especially because you can't use your hands to control it. The Penstar eNote requires the pen in order to control it, aside from, of course, the side controls here, which I will talk about in a moment. But the pen itself is actually pretty nice. It doesn't feel too chunky. Sometimes pens on these devices can be really big and fat and not feel like a normal pen. It's almost like they're too big to be a normal pen. This feels like just the right size, which is really nice. As I said earlier, it has a felt tip. And actually, if I unscrew the pen itself, on the inside is an assortment of 4 replacement felt tips. So when they wear out, you can just open this up, pop one in there, and you even get more in the box as well that you can trade into those slots. So you always have kind of a felt tip waiting for you. This has, of course, an eraser on the other end. Now it has a little bit of give to it. If I go ahead and hop into this note here and drag over the top of it, as you can see, it gets rid of it. It is a plastic feeling eraser, so there's no resistance. This is one of the parts where it kind of breaks down as far as mimicking an actual kind of pencil on paper experience. You don't get a little bit of that drag, which I understand. They don't want to, have too much resistance here that you can't actually do the function that you want to do with it. Also, I will say that the plasticky nature of the eraser on this screen gives me a little bit of pause. It almost feels like I'm gonna scratch the display with the plastic, but of course I haven't seen any indication that that's actually happening. Also present on the pen is this little button. It's a side multifunction button. Quick switch tool is what they call it. And it's textured. As you can see, it sits flush with the pen, which, the texture is nice to know that it's there. So if I go down here and write something, I've noticed that as I write more things, sometimes my thumb is resting there unintentionally. And if I'm pushing that down and starting to write more, it switches into whatever that multifunction button is set to do. Right now it's set for eraser. So you can see as I was holding it down, it was erasing things. And sometimes I can unintentionally hit that. So it's almost like it's a little too flush. It's too easy to accidentally bump into it and, fire off whatever the command is that's associated with it. But I think it's the kind of thing that you get used to over time. I started to kind of rotate the pen when I was using it, and to make sure that it's not sitting right underneath my thumb. It just takes a little kind of getting used to where that is at any given time. And finally, this whole system supports up to 8,192 levels of sensitivity, which is twice what you get on a lot of the other competitors. So that's a really great upgrade. Double the resolution. You can't beat that. Now, the software on the Penstar eNote is a modified version of Android. This is Android 11 underneath the hood. Though you never know it. Like I said, it's modified, so it's completely made to Penstar's specifications. Some of the little tells, as far as the Android operating system, some of these menus kind of look vaguely familiar, but it's really a modified version of Android 11. The downside here is that this is not a GMS certified device. So what does that mean? You do not have the Play Store on this device. You do not have Google's apps hooked into it, right? So in order to pull in apps outside of the apps that this device ships with, you have to sideload APKs in order to do that. Now, in the case of the Kindle app, I used Chromium to do a search for the Kindle APK, found the right version, installed it on the device, and it loads pretty much as you would expect, so that's nice. But there really is a big caveat here, big word of caution. If you're getting this device with the intention of sideloading a bunch of apps, you really have to be cautious about that. A lot of apps have certain requirements for the devices before they'll ever even consider installing on them. This device doesn't have a camera, for example, so that's going to eliminate the possibility of installing a whole lot of apps out there that rely upon that. In general, there are a lot of apps that rely on Google's services. Those aren't going to work here. So some apps are not going to gel on this device in the same way that sideloading the Kindle app obviously does. That's just something that you have to keep in mind. Don't get this tablet if you have the specific intention of sideloading a bunch of different types of apps on it. You're going to have mixed results when you do that. You might want to browse the web, and if so, highly recommend the Chromium browser that is included here. But definitely keep in mind that things can be a little dicey with how things are rendered. And I'm going to go to The Verge, which tends to be a really great destination for me to check how different browsers do rendering different websites. And The Verge, it's a very graphically intensive website. As you can see, some weirdness happening with the logo overlaying on top of the title of one of these articles. You can see a lot of dark space. It's probably color on a color monitor, but here on the black and white ePaper, things just get lost and you have a hard time kind of seeing and reading some of the text, and the detail is just shattered. So this is not a wonderful, pleasant experience. You're gonna have kind of iffy output depending on the web pages that you go. As you can also see, things are a little laggy, right? That refresh that's inherent with ePaper kind of kicks into gear. And I would also mention that not having multi-touch really makes navigating the web on a tablet style device a little bit more complicated. So it's, not, not the best experience in the world, but it's there nonetheless. You can use it when you absolutely have to. When it comes to on-screen keyboard, this is where the multi-touch would be really nice to have. You can't quite multi-touch on a device that doesn't allow for it. And so the keyboard ends up being kind of a hunt and peck experience with the pen. Thankfully, there is this mode you can jump over and you can test, as I'm doing right now, and it will convert into text. But sometimes that's not the perfect solution. Sometimes it doesn't work quite as well as just being precise with an on-screen keyboard. So you're making a little bit of a trade-off there. Just something to keep in mind. It's not always perfect when you're entering text on the device. So now let's take a look at the home screen, which is kind of the hub of all of your control on the Penstar eNote. And this gives you direct access to a bunch of different aspects of the device. Got the calendar, which I'd say my complaint here is that I am fully committed to the Google Calendar, And managing this calendar, it doesn't sync between the two, so you're really managing multiple calendaring situations in order to really buy into this. I'm not willing to do that. Same thing goes for email. There is no like Gmail app to install on here, right? You have to set it up via IMAP, and that's not an impossibility, but that will preclude some people from going through those extra steps in order to do it. Notes, of course, this is the section that I probably used and relied upon the most. Very nice, I can jump right into there. I can create a different cover for every one of my notes. If I don't do that, then the note itself becomes the cover, and you can see it's kind of difficult to read from that area. You can see a little rudimentary checklist here. When I go back out to this area, I don't know what that actually means. I could actually go in there and modify the cover, and then I can just create it, checklist for video. And there we go. And now that's integrated. If I create a new note, it automatically goes to my cover screen, so I can do that right off the top, or I can name it, that sort of stuff. If we go into the checklist for video, we've got this list, handwriting, and I can actually do some really interesting things here. I can go ahead and insert shapes, which is kind of how I did this. It's good for making checklists. I do a circle and it transforms that into an actual evened out circle. It also does, triangle and square. There is a convert to text feature, and this will do its very best to convert this into text. My output here and my testing is really, I'd say, mixed results. Sometimes it works really well, and sometimes some of this other stuff that's in there kind of throws it off. And so let's see how it did here. Video production checklist, write script. It turned the check mark into a question mark. That's fine, I get it. Fact check, shoot a roll. Okay, so it did a pretty reasonable job. Now you can imagine if you had a notepad here filled with notes, you're probably going to want to go through that and, just make sure that it gave you exactly what you wrote down. But in my testing of this, it gets you most of the way there, and then you check it and you make the corrections of the things that it didn't quite get. But if you're making a lot of notes and you want to turn it into something that's searchable, something that's easy to copy and paste into other places, this is a really great way to do that. You do have some really great customization around the different types of pens that you can actually use to write and to draw and that sort of stuff, be it a marker or a brush or a finer tipped pen that's a little bit darker. And these, are really handy to have. You just tap on the button of the particular tool and it brings this up for you. And the same can be said for things like the eraser that gives you an expanded tool set, and lasso if you want to, draw a circle around this and then move it. You can do that. And then finally, over here is the templates area. This is really handy because it comes with a bunch, just a whole host of different templatized approaches for the actual layout of your notepad. So I've been using blank. Of course, there's dots, there's grid. If you go into some of these other areas, you end up with kind of these pre-made check mark box layouts, checklists, weekly planners. It really does kind of cover the gamut. You also get into the ability to write music. I think at the end of the day, the Penstar eNote is above all else a great notepad. It's great for scribbling out your notes in a large format device and saving those and being able to export them to text and use them later. And so features like this really make it feel more like you're writing on paper. We've also got the bookshelf. This is where if you've imported any PDFs or docs into the experience, this is where they are kept. As you can see, my friend Jeff Jarvis recently released his new book out now called The Web We Weave. It's excellent. I have the PDF imported into here and I have direct access to it through that home screen. Up here is a little pen icon. Go ahead and hit that and I get some of those familiar things that I was working with in Notes, right? I could pull up and get a ballpoint pen, and this could be useful for, circling a certain part of it and research. or whatever I would need to do to tie it into the PDF itself. You can also go in here and use it as if it were a highlighter. So I'll go ahead and go dark gray, marker, and I will go ahead and highlight some parts of this. And there you can see that's now saved for me. It doesn't do the kind of like straightening and correction that I've seen in some of the other devices like this, but nonetheless, it does the trick, and it is all tied to the page. So if I go forward to page 13, you can see that I have some notes from another time of playing around with this PDF on the Penstar eNote. Something that can be really handy here is a feature for split screen. So if we go ahead and pull down this to open up here split view, if I hit that, it's going to reorient everything, and it's going to take my PDF and put it on one side, and then on the other side have kind of a smaller version of the Notepad, which allows me to scribble. If I have the right tool on, we'll go ahead and go to pen, and I could scribble away my notes, so I have a much larger space in which to work attached to the PDF on the other side. That's a really nice kind of multitasking approach for taking notes while you're reading your PDFs and your docs. And then finally down here, the apps section, which is kind of everything else. You've got your system apps all integrated into here. If you want to install any of those apps like I've done with the Kindle or access Chromium, you can get to there as well. Now in your apps section, you have this Wi-Fi transfer app. And this is a really great way to take files from another device and bring it on here with very little to do to make it work. You just start Wi-Fi transfer. You've got your QR code down here. I can go ahead and pull out my phone and jump into the camera mode. It gives me the URL and I go to it. And then I can select to transfer files from my device. Just as an example, I'm gonna pick this image from a bonfire that we had at our chili cook-off the other day. And as you can see, it's already transferred it right over. It's actually a pretty quick transfer. And we'll go ahead and jump right into that so you can see the glorious imagery of a black and white ePaper trying to recreate a very vibrant bonfire at night picture from the other day. And actually, I mean, you know, for a grayscale ePaper, that doesn't look half bad. It's a very quick transfer, and actually this device supports up to 35 different doc format types. So PDF, of course, that's how I have Jeff Jarvis's The Web We Weave in here. EPUB, Mobi, text, Word documents, PowerPoint, a whole bunch of file support here that you can pull in using that very easily. If you want to sync to the cloud, of course, there is Cloud Sync, and you can sync to Google Drive, which is what I have it set up. You can also sync to Dropbox and to Microsoft OneDrive. The software also includes what they call gravity sensing, which is really just an auto rotate functionality. If we go into here in the settings and go to rotate, we can turn on auto rotate. And this is actually useful because not everyone, as you know, is right-handed. This is useful the way it's set up right now for me to write right-handed and not get in the way of the controls. If I was left-handed, I'd be bumping into those controls. So if I go ahead and reorient this, it'll flip. There we go. And then now if I'm a left-handed user, I can just use it this way all the time. And you know, it's kind of nice too, because the Folio case, the way it's set up, it's not set up to orient either way. So it really works regardless. And you can set that in settings to always default to this setting as well if you happen to be left-handed. And finally, on that side, as I've been alluding to throughout, there are these hardware controls, these little plastic hardware controls, as well as the circular one, which is essentially a back button for the most part. These are all customizable, and customizable based on the app that you happen to be in. Right now I'm in the home, and so these are the settings associated with the home experience. If I go ahead and jump into the Web We Weave PDF, and then I pull up the menu, they are going to reflect different options based on the app that I happen to be in. I'll go ahead and go into Notes. And once again, these have changed. Some of them stay the same, like previous page, next page, but down here you'll see brand new options, things like refresh. So if you're getting that ghosting, you can just hit that to refresh it. Though I've found that this device does a pretty good job of minimizing the ghosting as I go along. But all of these are customizable. You can go in there and edit it to your choosing and assign any one of these features, depending on the app, into those positions so that they're there at the flick of a finger. And of course, it takes a little getting used to remember what these things do. If you want to jump right out to an app or between apps, that sort of stuff, you can assign it as you like, which makes it really customizable and really flexible. And then of course, when you're done, you just slide the pen into the Folio case, flip it around so you don't damage the display, and you're good to go. No question, the Penstar eNote is really great. I'd say it being a notepad. The feel of the pen on the screen really resembles the real thing. The resolution is sharp enough for my eyes anyways. The contrast is solid. It just kind of looks and feels like writing on paper. Plus, the software has some pretty cool tricks too, like handwriting conversion to text, dual screen mode, and cloud syncing for notes. And then you've got, of course, the hardware buttons on the side that are customizable that really bring a lot of personalization to the experience, but it's by no means a slam dunk either. While the lack of a light panel and multi-touch make for a more satisfying pen to paper experience, both features are definitely missed by me, especially multi-touch, as the pen really slows some aspects of control down to a crawl. If you want to use an on-screen keyboard with the pen, it's hunt and peck through and through, and that gets a little frustrating. The included apps are nice to have, but I'm not interested in managing a second calendar on this device when I already do it through Google Calendar. And installing third-party apps is technically possible, but the results can be unpredictable. Overall, the eNote is a value device. You aren't paying $400 to $500. It's just $369, and for that price, you do get the folio cover that I showed off, you get the pen, something you normally have to spend extra for with some of the other options out there. In the end, think of this as a great note-taking tablet at a budget price, and I think you'll be happy with your purchase. Check the comments down below for a link. If you'd like to get one of these, you want to find out more, that'll help me out if you end up buying it. That helps the health of the channel, so thank you for that. It is an affiliate link. And let me know also if the Penstar eNote ticks all the boxes for you and what matters most to you on a device like this. Also, if you like e-ink devices, you'll definitely want to check out my deep dive into the Books Palma smartphone-sized e-reader. That's on this channel as well. I'm Jason Howell. Thank you so much for watching my review of the Penstar eNote. We'll see you next time.